Welcome to our Peace Dividend interview series, inviting some of the nation's most respected thought leaders to offer an objective look at U.S. foreign policy. Today, we are pleased to have with us the highly honored, widely known, and respected peace activist, Margaret Kimberley. Margaret is executive editor and senior columnist of Black Agenda Report. Her book, Prejudential: Black America and the Presidents, was published in 2020 by Steerforth Press. She is a recipient of the Serena Shim Award for Uncompromising Integrity in Journalism and the Women's Institute for Freedom of the Press 2021 Women in Media Award. And she is also a board member of Consortium News. Ms. Kimberley is a contributor to the anthologies In Defense of Julian Assange, Capitalism on a Ventilator, The Impact of COVID-19 on China and the U.S., and Killing Trayvons, an anthology of American violence. Her activism includes membership on the Administrative Committee of the United National Anti-War Coalition, also known as UNAC, the Coordinating Committee of Black Alliance for Peace, and the board of directors for the U.S. Peace Memorial Foundation. She has appeared in national and international media, including CGTN, RT, Mayadeen, Deutsche Welle, Jazeera English, and Sky News. Welcome, Margaret. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Today's interview focuses on 5 questions. World events continue to unfold at a quickening pace, facing an alarming escalation in tensions around the world. We look to Margaret for her most current thoughts. As I've indicated before, we're focusing on the realities of the international power struggle unfolding in real time, specifically addressing the role of the U.S. in the tensions and its capacity to reduce them. We hope to discover paradigm shift ideas for improving the prospects for peace. Shall we get started?
Yes, let's go.
First question. We hear a lot of terms and acronyms bandied about: deep state, MIC, fire sector, ruling elite, oligarchy, neocons. Who actually defines and sets America's geopolitical priorities and determines our foreign policy? Not officially, not constitutionally, but de facto.
Well, we have an oligarchy, and all of those, terms you mentioned I include in that the military-industrial complex, the finance capital. It's all part of some popularly known as from the I'm sorry, I'm blanking on Wall Street. What is it? The 1%. I'm sorry, and I'm blanking on. Anyway, so yes, it's all of those things. The 1%, the Lords of Capital, finance capital. It's all it's all the sort of the same. They all work together to run the world. I saw a funny headline. Somebody made a meme out of it. Occupy Wall Street. Sorry, that's what I was trying to say. The term 1%. But at any rate, someone said there was a headline in I think it was Market Watch. It said people have a crazy idea that rich people run the world at Davos. And I said, well, why is that a crazy idea? I mean, that was the joke. That's not a crazy idea. That is in fact what we have. Capital runs the world, and it could be finance capital, it could be fossil fuel people, it could be the bank, it could be any number of things, but that's who runs things, unless we have a true revolution. We are beholden to these entities, even in countries that are supposed to be democracies like this one, where we're supposed to have a role in government. We're supposed to have these elected representatives, but they don't represent us. If they represented us, we would have a higher minimum wage. We would have Medicare for all. There wouldn't be $100 billion of our money sent to Ukraine. So that's who really the de facto governance of this country and much of the world really is.
We've had decades of international tensions. Recent developments have seen a sharp escalation in the potential for a major war. The U.S. apparently cannot be at peace. Threats against the homeland are allegedly increasing in number and severity. The trajectory of our relations with the rest of the world appears to be more confrontations, more enemies, more crises, more wars. Is the world really that full of aggressors, bad actors, ruthless opponents? Or is there something in our own policies and attitudes toward other countries which puts us at odds with them, thus making war inevitable and peace impossible?
Well, it's the latter. I mean, these so-called enemies, Russia and China, they're labeled adversaries, they're enemies. People are banning TikTok on college campuses, and certain state and local governments are banning the use of TikTok on devices. It's ridiculous. China and Russia both were trying to get along with the US. China, you called it the win-win. You let us do what we do. We're not going to bother you. So much so, both countries in 2011, I want to bring up a little fact that folks may not know or have forgotten. In 2011, when NATO attacked Libya with the intent of destroying the Libyan state, there was a no-fly zone resolution before the UN Security Council. As permanent members, China or Russia could have vetoed the no-fly zone resolution, but both of them abstained. And that is because at that time, they were trying to get along, but all they did was increase the US is a bully. You know how, and if you placate a bully, you just get more bullying. So I use that example to show people that it's just a lie, that they're out to get us. And who is the us we're talking about? Is it because I'm not in the wireless network, and I don't want Huawei phones to be. If you ask the average person, from what I know about Huawei phones, everybody would want one. And that's, of course, why they have restricted them, because they know there would be competition. Um, Russia was selling natural gas to European countries. This was the cheapest, most reliable, cleanest source of energy for Europe was Russia's natural gas. But they listened to the United States and slit their own throats. And now the U.S. has done what it wanted to do, which was to force Europe to buy liquefied natural gas, that is to say, fracked gas from the US. So these countries, they're not adversaries. Excuse me. They would prefer to have some kind of peaceful coexistence, which is the only thing that makes sense. So no, these are not our enemies. And I always caution people not to use the first person. When you talk about the United States government, this state, don't say we, it's say them, say the government, say the states, say the Biden administration, or whichever crazy administration we have to live with. But no, we don't have these enemies. The US makes enemies because it insists on trying to be the hegemon of the world. And hegemons don't have friends. As the Europeans have found out, hegemons only have enemies or vassals. So no, all this stuff about enemies it's a lie meant to get buy-in for whatever it is the state already intends to do.
Our leaders, I'm having trouble talking. Our leaders relentlessly talk about our national interests and our national security, warning that both are under constant assault. Yet we spend more than the next 9 countries combined on our military. Why does such colossal spending never seem to be enough?
Because, as I just said, the hegemon can't be big enough. It can't control enough. However, what happens is everything they do to try to maintain control blows back on them. And so they create problems for themselves. So, for example, I mean, is 20 years enough for us to talk about how September 11th was blowback from the U.S. funding people like bin Laden and other jihadists, starting with the Carter administration? So but they will always try to make it work. So 9/11 is carried out by guys who got on commercial jets with box cutters and knives. And we were told the only way to make us safe was to spend billions more on defense, which has been growing and growing and growing ever since. So the other reason it keeps growing is that our elected representatives are all bought off. So we don't have anyone representing us. So even people who are supposed to be quote unquote progressives, they vote for this huge military spending. I mean, it's 800 more than $800 billion right now. Um, and it will be $1 trillion in a few years at this rate. So it will never be enough. They have bought off all the people they need to buy. That's why I say our country is an oligarchy. It's not a democracy. We have two political parties, both capitalist parties, both in the pocket of the defense industries, and many other big pharma. I mean, I could go on with all the control of our supposed representatives, and that's why it's never enough. And what happens is, so see, look what happened in Ukraine. So 8 years ago, 9 years ago now, 2014, the Obama administration sided with the right wing in Ukraine and helped them overthrow the president. That was a US-backed coup. And this was supposed to help the United States. So, but they continue on this trajectory of, I call it fantasy foreign policy. So what did they do last year? They instigate a war with Russia. They have, and they got some of what they wanted. They have turned Europe into a little colony, but they've also run out of weapons. You know, they have run out of weapons. NATO countries are scrounging for weapons. The U.S. kept weapons in Israel and decided to, this last week, to get some of them to give to Ukraine. They have bled themselves dry. So that's another reason it's never enough. And it's also because what they want is not possible to have without engendering more conflict, more hostility around the world. So their actions keep this going. And then they get to say, you know, we're never safe enough. You know, we have to have more spending. And then they shut us up by buying off the people who are supposed to represent us. So those of us who oppose this, or even who want to ask questions about it, we have no voice. So that's how it goes on and on.
It's evident that you and the many individuals who follow you and support your work believe that America's direction in both the diplomatic sphere and in the current conflict zones represents exercise of government power gone awry. Can you paint for us in broad strokes the specific changes in our national priorities and policies you view as necessary for the U.S. to peacefully coexist with other nations, at the same time keeping us safe from malicious attacks on our security and rightful place in the world community?
Well, how to keep us safe is to stop doing most of the things they're doing now. Arming, you know, it was jihadists in Libya and Syria. It's neo-Nazis in Ukraine. It could be any number of bad actors who we're told keep us safe by being supported, only down the line to find out that uh, that's not true. So, you know, this idea of peaceful coexistence, which is what we should be working on, has just been discarded. It's a hindrance to them. And so they go on and on with the same harmful policies. But I hope people can just imagine a different a different world, and not this world that we're told is the only. And the thing that's so insidious, we're told this is our only option. This is the best of all possible worlds. We're the greatest country in the world. This is all there is. And anyone who, of course, that's an attempt to shut up anybody who says, wait a second, actually, it's not. And that works unfortunately, all too often.
Okay, now the most important, and the most difficult question. The general public, especially when it's aware of the self-sabotaging results of our current foreign policies and military posturing, clearly wants less war and militarism, preferring more peaceful alternatives on the world stage and greater concentration on solving the problems at home. As peace activists, we are thus more in line with the majority of citizens on issues of war and peace than those currently in power. What happens, Margaret, if we determine that those shaping current U.S. policy don't care what the citizenry thinks, are simply not listening to us? What if we conclude that our Congress, for example, is completely deaf to the voice of the people? What do we do? What are our options then? What are our next concrete steps as political activists in working toward a peaceful future? As a thought leader and advocate of dramatic reform, Margaret, what do you propose?
Well, I think we have to conclude that the people who allegedly represent us do not and don't care what we think. They're not listening to us. They create propaganda, war propaganda, various other kinds of propagandas to make us think they're listening to us, or to convince us that what we want is not something that's possible. So they are deaf to us. I think we have to talk about revolutionary activity. I don't see any option. Electoral politics is a dead end. We are led to believe every 4 years, this is an important election. You vote for the person you want and you'll get what you want. Well, that doesn't happen. Look at the things that Joe Biden said he wanted. And it really makes me angry because they know what we want. So they know we want the minimum wage to go up. They know that. And so he tells you that'll happen if he's elected. What happens when he's elected? Oh, the Senate parliamentarian. I never heard about the Senate parliamentarian my whole life. I was vaguely aware there was such a position and such a person. But now everything we wanted that he said he was going to give us can't happen because of this excuse. So that is just an example of what we get, or rather what we do not get, from our electoral system. So I think we have to, we know that electoral politics doesn't work. And by the way, if you're concerned about electoral politics, you're better off being active locally than nationally. I mean, look at abortion. So abortion is legal in New York. Nothing changed with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. If you live in Texas, you can't get an abortion, even if you need one medically. So that's where our attention should actually be focused if you're interested in electoral politics. We have people who don't represent us. They get to be president because they owe their allegiance to other people, other interests, and not to us. And you asked the question about our national priorities. It should be to care for the people. We have, the estimates are 500,000 people who are unhoused. I believe that's an undercount. I'm sure there's 1 million homeless people in this country. There's no mystery about what to do for them. Build housing. Build public housing. It happened before. We can do that again. But ever since Reagan became president, the idea has been to kill the beast, kill the government, kill government spending, to just care for the people. Why do people want Medicare for all? Even people who have insurance. Everyone I know who's had a cancer diagnosis has gone broke. Even if they've recovered from their illness, even if they've been treated successfully, their finances are a mess. Student loan debt. Why do we have student loan debt? I mean, it's absurd. that you mortgage your future in order to get a college education. Of course, if you don't get a college education, then it's low wage work, it's gig work, it's all sorts of things that you can't use to protect yourself. So the priority should be to care for the people, but we have a very uncaring society. Look what happened with Build Back Better. It failed because the oligarchs didn't want it. They told Joe Biden, well, you can have a little stimulus thing, and it was supposed to be $2,000, but it was $1,400 because you already got 600. So 600 and 1,400 is 2,000. He even lied about that. But this greedy oligarchy of hyper wealthy people want us to have nothing. It is their goal for us to be impoverished, for us to live so insecurely that we don't protest, that we don't speak up. And these are the people who run the world. That's why that little meme was so funny, that somebody was so outraged. Can you believe people think rich people run everything? Well, they do. And that has to change. That's a tall order. I know the word revolutionary is scary, but and I'm not even sure myself what that means exactly about what we do next. But I think it's very important to just speak the truth and to say this system can't be reformed. It cannot be reformed. It has to be overturned. It has to be changed in a very basic way.
That concludes our interview. Again, thank you, Margaret, for taking the time to share your courageous, thoughtful, and powerful insights with us. And by the way, folks, if you want more of this kind of excellent analysis and commentary, I encourage you to visit Margaret's own website. And I don't want to get this wrong. What is the web address for that?
Well, there are several. blackagendareport.com is where I write a column every week, and I'm executive editor. You can catch me on Twitter. Freedom Ride Blog is my Twitter handle. I'm on Patreon as Margaret Kimberley. What else do I do? I'm trying to, they're always coming up with a new platform to pay attention to, but that's basically where you can get me. People can contact me through margaretkimberley.com.
Listen, folks, I want to sincerely thank all of you out there who are watching this and make one last request. Please visit and spend some time on the Peace Dividend website. The Peace Dividend strategy is a way to directly confront the imperial establishment, the war machine. Never give up hope and keep spreading the truth. Peace. Thank you, Margaret. Good day.